Etsy is an amazing platform for 3D printed products, but if you've never done it before, it can be kind of intimidating to get set up. So in order to show how that's done, we created an Etsy store and are going to walk you through the full process of going from nothing to sales. And I'll bet the results are not exactly what you were anticipating. So as many of you know, we actually operate a piece of software that allows 3D printing Etsy stores to plug into our giant print farms. It's a great resource that allows you not to have to worry about how to print and worry about all the back-end logistics of customers and sending parts out. But there's still all the front end that you guys are responsible for because it is your products and it is your store. So let's go ahead and start right at the beginning. When you're creating an Etsy store, you go ahead, you sign in, you give them your information, and you get signed up so that you have an Etsy store. Now you actually have to make that store. You have to give it a brand, identity, the products themselves. So the very first thing that we did is we researched products around on Etsy. On Etsy right now, 3D printed vases are actually quite popular because they can be made very affordably, but they also have great margins. And there's a number of things that can be done there. You can differentiate yourself by actually creating a good design. So we decided to go ahead and run with this. First of all, we went to Canva, and Canva is a totally free software that lets you create logos and artwork. And we created the Sustainabloom brand asset folder. This had the logo, this had the header, it had everything that we needed in order to brand the store. Sustainabloom because they're vases that are made with sustainable materials like PLA. Now this branding is really important because it is how customers will differentiate your store from many of the other stores that they might shop through. If someone is looking for vases and you have a similar type of vase, the branding of your store can differentiate you and make you more memorable when they come back around or when you do follow-up marketing in future. So it is important to not necessarily get this right on the first try, but make it distinct. All right, great. So we went ahead and set up the whole store. We have the logo, we have the ambiance of the thing. Now we actually have to create the items. Now these are 3D printed products. There's a lot of different ways to get these items. We were able to design them in-house where we could create a lot of different variations. We actually created a couple of core designs and then we stretched and pulled them in order to create a lot of different variations. Because here at the beginning, you're trying to establish what does the customer want. So you create a good wide variation of items and then the ones that sell we will focus in on later and start optimizing and growing once we know what customers are actually looking for and what we are competitive with in the context of the rest of the market. A few other ways you can get these models done is you can go to a place like Fiverr and have a designer create some models for you if you have some good detailed napkin sketches. You can also get a commercial license from like Patreon 3D modelers and that kind of thing to where you can get a good batch of models to get started with. Inside of our own Etsy plugin itself, you can also get access to models that you can sell on your store very easily, so you don't have to know anything about 3D printing. But if you're going for a very distinct style, you're probably gonna have to design them yourself or hire a designer. That being said, it's not really that expensive. You can generally get a good batch of files collected for somewhere between $10 and $100, depending on how you source them, where you find them, how much research you wanna do. Okay, so we have the files for all these designs and they're ready to go. Now we're responsible for photography. This is really important. The photo is the thumbnail that people click on. If it's not interesting, they will not click on it. So you need to have photos that show what the item is, and again, kind of branding that image so that people see your items aside from everybody else's, but also photos that communicate what the item is. Very often when laying out photos, it's good to have some standard background type photos where you have a solid color background where you just display the item so people know exactly what they're getting. But then you have a good number of photos in context, like, oh, here are some books next to it. Here's a coffee mug next to it. Here it is on a desk. We're doing vases, so of course we put some flowers in there and put them on a desk and next to all those things. This helps people understand the sizing of the item and understand what it looks like in the real world. Now you can take these photos with a traditional cell phone. You do not need fancy camera equipment or anything like that to make good photography. Good photography is really around the setup, but you do not have to be an expert photographer to do this. Modern phones are pretty darn good and will compensate for any amount of inexperience that you may have. The one other thing with photography is even if you have an item that is stagnant, make sure that you film a video of it, a rotating video, you just setting it on the table, something along those lines. Because down the line, when you're marketing this, Etsy wants videos so that they can promote it through their social channels like TikTok and Instagram Reels and so on. If you do not have a video video on your listing, you are not eligible for that type of marketing. So you want to take advantage of that. Again, it's not complicated. Literally, setting something on a table is fantastic and very universal as a good video to demonstrate what your object is and give some video content to Etsy to market your items for you. And now we get into pricing. What are you going to price your item for? We're going to go into this more later in the video around marketing and that kind of thing. But you need to make sure that you have as much margin as possible. And traditionally in retail, if you're buying a taco shell or an iPhone, generally the price of the item to the customer is 3 times the actual cost to make it. This is a nice baseline that you can work from. Aside from that, listen to your customers, understand your industry, and decide what the cost should be, both within context of competition and what it is that you're making. Many of our items were lower cost, like $15 or so, because they were a fairly simple basis. Now, in order to create the descriptions, you want to create really good descriptions of these items. You do not want to use generic, it's a vase, another vase, look at photos. Don't do that. You have to have a description that people engage with and read and actually describes the item. Now, if you're not a great copywriter, literally what you can do is write down a general bullet point description inside of ChatGPT, which is free, and then have it generate copy material for you, which has keywords around what you're looking for, describes the item, expands on your own stuff, gives it a style that you might want, so that that copy is readable and useful to the customer again. This is all about making sure that this is useful for the customer. So if you're not a great writer, that's fine. There's a lot of tools now to help you be a good writer, or at least make your store look like it's a good writer. Of course, as you go through, populate everything inside of the Etsy listing. Make sure you have tags that are descriptive. Make sure you're putting in a SKU number, because this is useful for other tools down the future. And a SKU is literally just a random identifier for the color and the item, so that no other color and item has that same combination. Okay, so now we have made the listings. Make sure that when you make these listings and when you're setting at the store that you have at least 10 items, and preferably even 20 to 30 items. This not only shows Etsy that you're serious and you have enough stuff to market and advertise, as we get into here in a moment, but it gives you enough stuff to learn information about your customers. Because in order to be a successful store, you are going to take the feedback from your customers, whether they give it to you directly or not. You're going to look at the data, and you need to be able to have enough information from all your different items to know what is popular, what will sell well, what isn't selling well, what people are clicking on, so on and so forth. Okay, all of that stuff was basically completed in about 3, maybe 4 days. Now we're basically on day 5, advertising. Now, Etsy has a native advertising tool built in where you literally just say, start advertising, and it will start advertising. This is a fantastic tool, but you have to budget for it. And this is where many people get hung up. They do not advertise their item. You really, really need to do this. Setting up advertising drastically increases your sales, because if your item is advertised and a competitor's is not, yours will get higher rating inside of Etsy. Advertising also, again, shows Etsy that you're serious, and it will bump the search results of your items inside of search. So if you have good photos and you're using advertising, you are going to be on that coveted first page of search if people are looking for 3D printed vase. But as I said, you need to budget it. Generally, a good start line is somewhere between $50 and $100 worth of marketing budget in order to get yourself started on Etsy before you start becoming profitable. Again, this can be tough for people because that can be kind of spendy. But if you have good items and you're doing all these next steps that we're going to talk about, you are in a good position to have a good chance of selling through and getting to profitability. So we set up ads. We also set up sales, because sales help with the conversion. This hurts again with your margin at the beginning, but sending sales out actually ping anyone who's following your store. Now, this is a brand new store. We didn't have a lot of follows, but we still have the sales there to help people click and buy when they're looking at the page. In future, as we have more followers, we can use those sales to basically send them a notification inside of their Etsy app that says this item is on sale, and that's a way you can basically remind them that they liked your vase. All right, we're finally here. Here are the results. After 7 days of running ads with these items, at the end of it all, we ended up with 8,500 views to the store. That's a lot of traffic going by and is a really good indicator of the amount of traffic that you can get on Etsy. 8,500 to 10,000 views in 7 days, with our biggest day being about 1,200 views, is really, really good. So we have good traction and our store looks nice and people are clicking on it. we did get 47 clicks. That click-through rate is not the best, which means that we might actually want to adjust some of our thumbnail images, make them a little bit more poppy, maybe change the title of some of the items to make sure that people are clicking through with what they want. What we would do is we would actually go into the analytics and see what are the search terms that people are finding us through. Are there search terms that shouldn't be attributed to us that we should kill, to make sure that when people click on us, they're happy with it, and when they see us, they want to click on us. All of that is important. So make sure you're looking at your data here. We spent $15.13 in ads in those 7 days. That is because we kind of limited ourselves to about $5 to $10 in ad spend per day. This is a nice slow burn as we're getting in information. So we spent $15 in ads and we sold $18 worth of merchandise. It was a single sale. One customer ordered 2 separate items on it all. We spent $15 in marketing and we made $18. So we did not get runaway sales, but 20 bucks in the first week for a brand new store that didn't exist before is actually quite good, because we can now take that learning and all this data that we've got and realize key terms, what item that buyer bought. It's like, okay, that's the one that's popular. What's another one that people are clicking on? You can basically rank your items by number of clicks that they're getting. And then the one that is having the highest click-through, since it's a 3D printed item, you can take it, create 10 more variations of that item to start honing in on it. Once you take that item and expand it, now you, rather than having one item that Etsy is pushing, you have 10 items that they are willing to push. So you take that data, you adjust your product, and you start focusing in on that. And then your sales will start expanding. And then as you improve your SEO and your thumbnail photos, it becomes less expensive to advertise against it. Because right now we're in the dark. We don't know what people are clicking on. So this learning is super, super important. So again, this is the reason for the budget of like the $100. We spent $15. We get to do that about 7 or 8 more times. So we get 7 or 8 more tests to really refine this. But that is not that bad. Most stores end up spending thousands of dollars just to get started. And at this point, you spent about $60, maybe $70 to create this Etsy store. You've got $20 in sales, and you have the information that you need to continue to improve. Now, this is not the way to make a big, successful, profitable store, but it actually is, because now we have a customer who will then turn into more reviews on the store, and that's terribly important. When a store is brand new, if you don't have reviews, again, that hurts you in Etsy search. So even if you're taking it in the teeth at the beginning, getting those reviews is so valuable. Have your mom, your aunt, your uncle buy stuff from you and review it so that you can get it up there. Have your friends look at the stuff, and most certainly share it inside of Facebook groups and that kind of thing. Do everything you can to promote it. But again, the success of this is quite good. You had 10,000 views. That's a lot of information. You got 50 clicks through, which is also a lot of information. You know what they clicked on, what was working, what images work best. And then you have the actual item that sold. So you know what is the baseline most popular item right at the moment. And now you can kind of budget and iterate and learn, because when you're a brand new company, it's about how fast you can learn. And again, with all of this, you did not have to worry about the actual printing and shipping. You did not have to set up a print farm. You did not have to buy 10 printers. You did not have to buy a printer. All you had to do was plug into something like our plugin so that we can print and ship the items for you, so that you never have to buy anything unless somebody actually buys an item from you, which completely changes this model. You get to focus on customer support, product design, analyzing the data, making sure you have the best item possible so that you can actually sell through and keep on going. So comment down below if you would like to see this store after a month, and we'll keep on growing it and you can come along for the journey. Also comment if there's any sort of topics that you'd like to see us talk about around selling 3D printed products. This was a great little demo video to show people the full process of how to create a 3D printing Etsy store, especially if you don't have a 3D printer and you're not used to it before. So let us know what you think, and have a great day, everybody.